Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second annual Workplace Safety Summit, Insights and Actions to Prevent the Most Common Injury on the Job. For those of you who don't know, my name is Paul Vincent, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Workplace Practice for the National Safety Council. And I want to welcome you all here today. Thank you for coming out in such great numbers. Last June, during the first Workplace Safety Summit, the National Safety Council proudly launched one of its hallmark initiatives, the MSD Pledge. And we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today as we celebrate the one-year anniversary of this groundbreaking initiative. Our mission at NSC is to save lives and prevent injuries from the workplace to any place. And so it should come as no surprise that NSC has focused on addressing one of the biggest occupational safety challenges of our time, musculoskeletal disorders, or MSDs. Here is what we have planned for today's summit, and we're really excited to share a video to further illustrate the scope and impact of this issue and the solutions some of our pledge members are using to reduce MSD risks and injuries. We also have a fantastic speaker lineup. First, we are pleased and honored to be joined by the Director of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, Dr. John Howard, who will deliver remarks on the future of workplace safety and participate in a Q&A. Later, we're excited to present a panel with MSD Pledge members to discuss learnings from the pledge after 1 year, including Clint Fritz, Safety Programs and Risk Manager for Nelson Brothers, Christine Cohn, Senior Manager of Ergonomics and Industrial Athletes for Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and Scott Stalaski, Corporate OSHA and Workers' Compensation Manager for L&F Distributors and Favorite Brands. We'll conclude with the MSD Solutions Lab Program Leader, Sarah Isher, who will share some really important updates about the future of the Solutions Lab. And we welcome questions from the audience, and we're going to do our best to get to all of them during today's event. Or if not, we'll follow up with further communication to you. If you have a question, please feel free to use the Q&A feature in the bottom of the Zoom screen. As safety experts and business leaders, you are well aware of the challenges MSDs present, like tendinitis, back strains, sprains, and carpal tunnel syndrome, to name but a few. But amid the daily demands of our jobs, it can be easy to overlook how the pervasive and devastating injuries these are. MSDs aren't just the most common workplace injury. They're the second leading cause of curbing a productive life, and according to the World Health Organization, outranked only by mental illness and substance abuse. MSDs don't just impact the workers themselves. As the leading cause of worker disability, involuntary retirement and limitations to gainful employment are some of the impact that these injuries have, and that then extends to families and communities. What's more, MSDs are cumulative injuries, meaning that what organizations do or don't do today to prevent them has the potential impact on their workforce and organizational culture and bottom line tomorrow. So our job is clear. It's to ensure that workers don't just make it home safely at the end of the day, but that when they do, they're able to live their fullest lives doing what they love with the people they love. We were among the first to sound the alarm on MSDs, and in 2021, with funding and support from Amazon, we established the groundbreaking MSD Solutions Lab to address this under-recognized issue. Today, we're proud to be joined by many others after issuing the industry's first ever call to action through the MSD Pledge. Let me tell you a bit about the pledge. The pledge's goal, while ambitious, is simple: create safer outcomes for millions of workers worldwide by collectively reducing MSD risks and injuries by 25% by 2025, a bold goal. We launched the pledge with just 16 organizations a year ago. And today the membership has grown to more than 160 organizations, every one of them committed to solving MSDs by doing these few things: analyzing causes and investing in solutions, sharing learnings and countermeasures with the community, promoting a workplace culture where safety excellence, transparency, and accurate reporting are equally valued, and above all, committing to a significant reduction of MSD injuries. Together, these organizations represent more than 2.7 million workers across every continent. I'll paraphrase that: apart from Antarctica. So if you have an operation in Antarctica, please let us know. We'd love to cross that one off the list too. But this is a real great story globally, and we're looking to expand. By signing the MSD Pledge, signing the MSD Pledge is just the first step. In addition to leveraging resources and safety innovations to help reduce MSD risks, one of the hallmarks of the pledge is the MSD Solutions Index. Ultimately, as we all know, what gets measured gets managed. And we know collecting workplace data is key to helping organizations mitigate their risks. MSD Solutions Index was developed in partnership with academic and industry experts, and results reflect how an organization is doing against the pledge goals. But the index also provides personalized feedback on what organizations are doing well and areas of opportunity to strengthen their MSD prevention efforts. Another critical component of the MSD Solutions Index is the ability to help identify broader trends affecting MSD risk and prevention today. For instance, we found nearly 90% of organizations have methods in place to share MSD solutions internally, but only half of those organizations are effective at disseminating their solutions externally. We also found that organizations that regularly engage their frontline workers in safety decisions and reporting are much more likely to have a strong safety culture. While this comes as no surprise, it underscores the significance of effective communication, transparent reporting, and trust in the workplace. MSD is looking forward to publishing the full community level report and sharing more findings later this year with our vast safety community so that all workplaces may benefit. I want to share one thing. No organization who took the pledge and filled in the index earned a perfect score. In fact, only 2% of organizations earned scores at the top of the risk reduction category. This highlights for us the complexity of MSDs. It also demonstrates that as a community, we have much more to do, which is why we're all here today. While each of us represents a myriad of industries and sectors presenting unique set of MSD-related concerns, we should all agree that healthy businesses start with safe workplaces. On behalf of National Safety Council, I want to thank you for your support, your participation, and for your continuous improvement in safety. In the spirit of celebrating the progress of our pledge community, I'm really excited to share with you a video featuring pledge members Boeing and Durable Services, highlighting how they pursue MSD prevention and put it into action.
When an organization signs the MSD Pledge, they are really making a commitment to reduce workplace injuries. Every employee deserves to work in an environment that truly values their safety. So whatever we can do on the job really matters.
We're talking about musculoskeletal disorders. It's an age-old problem that's been there since the beginning of labor. How do we push the boundaries? How do we break the mold? How do we bring in new opportunities? And the MSD Solutions Lab allows us a safe space, a sandbox, to be able to do that.
This is a pledge that organizations take to show a focus on reducing MSDs in their organizations, not for the rest of the world, just for them. It brings them into a community. Whether you're a large organization or a small one, you should get on board.
You know, with MSDs and ergonomic type injuries, it feels like it's been cost of doing business, you know, for a long, long time. And a lot of these injuries are life-changing for people. The MSD Pledge really highlights the criticality to go and address them. I am very proud to participate in this initiative with NSC.
What we found is that MSD solutions can help us kind of work above our weight. We work for some of the largest companies in the country, if not the world, and it helps us put together a better presentation and have better resources.
Our equipment ranges anywhere from a couple hundred pounds to close to 1,000 pounds. In 2019, 2020, we started investing in new fleet where we had lift gates. Those lift gates make it easier for us to load and maneuver equipment. If our frontline isn't being mindful of how they're maneuvering that, they can easily injure themselves.
For the last 5-6 years, I mean, Durable has been doing extensive work in trying to reduce MSDs, constantly looking into new technologies as far as, you know, stand-up grinding work. The conversation is always revolving around how do we get these guys up off the ground? How do we get them up off their backs?
So 34 years at the company, but 2.5 of those years I was at home healing from surgeries, from injuries. I came to the Safety Dojo when it opened. We've had over 56,000 employees come to the Safety Dojo looking for help with safety solutions.
I think switching to lighter tools in any position would always reduce the amount of wear and tear on the body.
You have to earn the trust of the people building the airplanes, our mechanics. So they can come to work and not have a pit in their stomach that they're gonna come home hurt.
The exoskeleton helps to reduce the MSD. It assists me, so if I have to do any overhead work, a lot of the pressures that would feel right here, all the fatigue, is pretty much minimal to none. I'm glad to see that this pledge is going forth. Anything that helps reduce any type of MSDs and musculoskeletal disorders, then I say that is a great thing to go for.
The MSD Pledge is great for us because everything that we're doing puts strain on the human body. You know, whether it's them doing the repetitive tasks of being up and down off of the ground, being on their hands and knees, crawling on the ground. You know, for us, the concern about coming to work and going home in the same physical state is priority number one.
What makes this whole journey of mine through safety personal? I mean, I'm a young man and I go to a chiropractor once a month to get my back readjusted. And I had to tell the chiropractor, listen, I just want to pick up my daughter.
Psychological safety at Durable Surfaces is really important because it's not just about being safe. It's honestly about being able to speak up and have that open communication. So we are always keeping that two-way communication open, especially for our ladies who don't feel like they can speak up or don't feel like they can say something. We have a team here who are willing to help each other no matter what.
We want to make sure that our employees, our friends, our coworkers can make it home safely.
Wow, what a powerful video. And this is going to be one of a series that we're going to do to bring to you solutions and insights from partner organizations. But next, I'm proud to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, John Howard. For those of you who may not know Dr. Howard, he is the director of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health and the administrator of the World Trade Center Health Program in the US Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Howard was first appointed NIOSH director in 2002, and he is currently serving his 4th term as director. With that, please welcome Dr. Howard.
Oh, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. And good to be with you all today. And hopefully you can see my slides. Yeah, they are. So today I'm going to talk to you about wearable robotics, which is an interesting new thing that may influence MSD prevention. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to do is introduce you a bit to some key technologies that we're seeing now in the workplace related to sensors and robotics. and then really concentrate on industrial exoskeletons, some of the risks and the benefits, whether these are being accepted by workers. In your own opinion, do you consider them to be engineering control or PPE? And lastly, a little bit about where the regulatory aspects are. Next slide, please. So just to let you know, as Paul mentioned, we are the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. We do research. We make recommendations primarily to our statutory partner in the Occupational Safety and Health Act, that is OSHA. Next slide, please. So, we're all bombarded by all of these terms these days: big data, cloud computing, Internet of Things, robotics, sensors, AI, lots of different terms, and they're all interrelated. And sometimes it's kind of hard to see how they are interrelated. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about robotics as a way of modeling all of these things. Next slide, thank you. So just to let you know that this is a North American census, if you will, in thousands of units of industrial robots. So you can see there was a little pandemic dip, but we're now back up in 2022. Next slide, please. So this is a theory of robotics, if you will, just to compare them to us, human workers. Like us, the robot senses, we sense our environment. The robot thinks, we think about our environment, and the robot acts, and certainly that's what we do. So this sensing is done through inputs from all sorts of different kinds of sensors. Thinking is done primarily through AI methods, and acting is done in the case of physical devices, steel collar robots, but also software programs like Alexa. We call a white collar robot. Next slide, please. So we're going to do a little dive into sensors. Next slide, please. So the definition basically of a wearable sensor is something that is advanced. It's not your normal sensor. It uses computing technologies. A person can wear it on their body. We see that all the times in the Apple Watch and all sorts of things like that. But the industrial uses are starting to increase, monitoring productivity, identifying and intervening on safety hazards and risks, providing augmented instructions to improve task management, and facilitating health and wellness. The market is growing. As you see here from this data, it is expected to be quite huge, 12% growth rate from 2020 to 2027. There are adoption concerns, and you look at the literature in this area, you find studies like this one from Shaw in 2018, over half of nearly 1,000 responders tracking wearable sensors for occupational safety and health issues. Concerns were expressed by workers about privacy, confidentiality of the data that's being collected by the sensor, and about how long the sensor, the durability. Am I gonna whack it next to a struck by object, and am I gonna damage it? And also relative to what the employer is doing. What is the safety need that makes me wear this wearable? Next slide, please. So you can classify them into at least three major groups. Placeables we've had around for years, where you put a placeable sensor in a workplace to be able to monitor something that you want to monitor. But the wearable sensors is really something new. They can be attached to workers, not just to clothing, to the head, the arms, to the hard hat, but also within computer display eyeglasses, contact lenses, placed in the ear canal. That's something new. They can be attached to equipment. That is certainly not something new. But what is new, electronic textiles, where you actually woven sensors into textiles, or electronic epidermal wearables, kind of like tattoos, if you will, that are applied directly to the skin. And the third major is implantable, used in South Africa in deep gold mines, swallowing a pill to be able to sense the core temperature of the worker. Lots of different kinds of new sensors coming into the workplace. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture of some of the woven sensors, as well as a picture of the epidermal electronic sensor, really ushering in perhaps a new or a 21st century exposure science. Next slide, please. This is from Liberty Mutual, looking at all wearable devices, kind of assessing, what's the response to workers here. And as you can see, some concerns here about the wearable device might be introducing new safety hazards, might decrease my productivity, and the big issue, 25% of workers, the access to private or sensitive information. So it's a mixed bag, so to speak, right now. Next slide. So let's talk about acting the robot, if you will. Next slide. So if you look at the taxonomy of all the types of robots that exist, certainly the assembly line robots, not from the 1970s, car manufacturing, they've been around for a long time. What's new are collaborative robots. They work in the same space with human workers. A lot of different kinds of service robots, social robots, personal services, personal care robots, and then lastly, wearable robotics, which we're going to spend some time on. Next slide, please. So cobots, or collaborative robots, as I mentioned, here the big issue is collision with the human worker. And we're seeing more of these in a lot of different workplaces. Next slide, please. Autonomous service robots, this is an example of a very large vehicle used at Rio Tinto in Pilbara, Western Australia. There's no driver to this vehicle, and actually the operator is a couple 2-hour flight away in Perth. So you see that autonomous service robots are not just for car manufacturers, they're actually in the workplace. Next slide, please. And not only in the workplace, but on the workplace that you may frequent in terms of the robot truck, which is being used in piloted areas, here pictured in Tennessee on a track, looking at whether or not we can have a service robot that actually transports our goods. Next slide, please. And social or humanoid robots, very common. The original one was called Pepper, there in the upper right-hand corner. But we see now, especially in convalescent facilities, in nursing homes, in hospitals, useful types of robots for lifting. Next slide. Now, clearly, you can say there are lots of advantages. Certainly, transferring hazardous work from the human worker to the robotic worker is probably number one. Robots are much better at routine, precise, or repetitive tasks. They can find patterns in thousands of dimensions. I think we're kind of limited to 3 or 4 dimensions. They're better at managerial tasks. And lastly, they cost less because you're eliminating the human worker maybe from that task and having to pay all those benefits. Next slide, please. Clearly, they raise some risks, not only in the collision risks that we talked about with cobots, but also in terms of the robot being, shall we say, thought of by an AI methodology in which machine intelligence is dynamic, and it may be changing what you think is your 3-ring binder safety procedure that you spent a lot of time on putting on a shelf, but the machine intelligence is actually changing that. And the last issue, of course, which is a real risk for all of us, is the rapidity, the velocity with which all of this technology is being developed is outpacing national standard settings such as OSHA standards. Next slide, please. So let's talk about exoskeletons here, because we're here to talk about MSDs. And it's kind of an interesting question. Are these things going to help us? Next slide, please. So we all know about exoskeletons. They're all over biology. We've all seen a turtle with an exoskeleton. We've seen a lobster and a crab with exoskeletons. So these are probably known as shells more often to us than an exoskeleton. But in the industrial area, we define these as an external device, external to the body, that I can either augment, amplify, reinforce the performance of a worker's existing body components. They come in either an active version, which are powered through actuators like an electric motor, pneumatics, hydraulics. This is certainly what we know as a robotic exoskeleton. Some, though, can be passive, outfitted with springs and counterbalances. They're used in back assist, shoulder and arm assist, leg assist, and also for tool holding. We've seen that. So this is sort of the generalized approach to industrial exoskeletons in terms of their types. Next slide, please. So as you can see here from this slide, this is a little slide from Wearable Robotics Association in terms of the various activity in the area. And you can see that the medical exoskeleton development is probably leading. This is a very active area where lots of robotics are being developed in the exoskeleton area for folks with disabilities who have missing limbs. But you see that the industrial exoskeleton development community, the market there, is certainly second, very robust. Next slide. So when we look at the wearable industrial exoskeleton, as I say, the purpose is to augment, amplify, or reinforce the worker's performance, especially lower back and upper extremities. That's where we see most of the assist devices being used. Now here, it's very interesting because if you go to a manufacturer's convention of exoskeleton manufacturers, you will hear that these devices will prevent work-related MSDs. And clearly, they seem to have a positive role associated with lifting and handling heavy materials, supporting heavy tools in overhead work. It is not, let's say, a total I'd like to say that it is just a promise. It's not an actual delivery. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. The uses are really starting to expand across several industry sectors, including the car and aircraft manufacturing, construction, wholesale and retail trade sectors, materials handling, especially. Next slide, please. So when you look at these devices that are appearing across several industry sectors, at least on a pilot basis, as I say, they may play a role in reducing MSD. Certainly that's the promise. But, you know, there are, with every benefit, there comes risks, as we all know. Wearing an exoskeleton may pose a number of risks that are not currently well studied. And one of the big ones is over-attributing strength or flexibility to the exoskeleton device. In other words, behaving as if you are now converted into a cyborg, much stronger than the actual device is able to provide you. So you are over-attributing strength. And certainly our big issue at NIOSH and where we spend our research energy is doing studies in this area because there are only a few peer-reviewed published studies, long-term use about the safety and health of wearable exoskeletons. What we do have are quite a number of small laboratory-based studies. So there's a need for prospective interventional studies, and that's what we at NIOSH are involved in. Next slide, please. So as I say, there's a number of really good systematic reviews, and I have references to these in my at the end of my slide set, which I hope the NSC will provide to you if you want to investigate this further. These are small studies, 5 to 15 in a laboratory setting, and they show a potential decrease in muscle activity in body regions supported by an exoskeleton. So certainly an antecedent to an MSD is a lot of muscular activity causing strain. So this is positive, this is promising. And so these studies suggest that use of exoskeletons during occupational tasks at least modifies the physical strain and has the potential to counteract the risk of developing MSD complaints. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the long-term studies. In other words, wearing an exoskeleton for a long time. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, I only have one study to show you. It's a big one though, and it was done by Virginia Tech in their ergonomics and engineering department in conjunction with Ford Motor Company. It was a partnership between the two. It's the first prospective study assessing the longitudinal effects of shoulder exoskeleton. So here we have a upper body assist at automotive assembly factories. It was an 18-month study. Data was collected at 1, 6, 12, and 18 months. 41 participants in the exoskeleton wearing group and 83 in the control group. The equipment used was an exo vest, which is made by Exobionics, a 4.3 kilogram exoskeleton. Next slide, please. And what they found out, they collected health outcomes in terms of also worker demographics like age, sex, and BMI, and also measured physical demands using a methodology that is commonly accepted in ergonomics. They assessed MSD symptoms and they perceived the usability measures. In other words, this goes to whether a worker is going to accept wearing one of these things. So these usability measures of comfort, range of motion, safety, performance, usage rate, and open-ended response. Usage rate is how many workers want to put on the thing the second time after wearing it the first time, for instance. Next slide, please. So the statistics were not statistically significantly different between the MSDs, between the folks wearing the exoskeleton and the controls. Although I hasten to point out there was some suggested reductions in symptoms. Individuals who wore the exoskeleton were less likely to report neck and shoulder symptoms than those. So that's a promising finding. There were no safety adverse effects in the user group. In other words, getting problems with damaging the worker because they were wearing an exoskeleton. And productivity was slightly better at 1 month of the study and was continued throughout. The acceptance through these usability responses were consistent across time and across the facilities, which were in general positive. Next slide, please. So when you look at sort of the studies that are out there, in other words, you know, we want, if they do prevent MSDs, we certainly want to see them used where there is a safety indication for them. And there's a number of studies here. I cite one from 2020 that really talked about the social influence issue. In other words, workers work in a group. And oftentimes their collective opinion about a safety device is sometimes more important. A small group of retail food workers in Austria, another study in 2022, found that exoskeleton acceptance was also related to the safety criteria. In other words, why am I wearing this? And such other criteria as how it looked, how attractive it was, and the social acceptance by the group. Kim et al. From Virginia Tech found, again, in their study with Ford, perceived usability, comfort, and performance are key determinants. Next slide, please. So I think we can all know, as Paul mentioned, that MSDs are a big problem. Certainly they're first in the global burden of disease. Next slide, please. And as Paul mentioned, they cost a lot of money. And as we can see here, they always are at the top of any list in terms of the costs to the worker, cost to the worker's family, the cost to the employer, the cost to society. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of the research that we're doing at NIOSH to try to get a better handle on the exoskeleton issue. This is a very big deal. We're getting a lot of interest on the part of folks, and I would invite any of you who are interested in partnering with us to give us a jingle, and we're happy to set you up with a partnership on our researchers in this area. Next slide, please. So my last question for you is, what do you think? Do you think an exoskeleton is an engineering control, or do you think it's personal protective equipment? Next slide, please. As you know, the reason I ask is because we have to put it on the hierarchy of controls somewhere. As you see, engineering controls are favored more than PPE. So it is an interesting question I leave to you to think about. Next slide. This is an example of a car manufacturer in Volkswagen in Germany. And as you can see here, they're not using a shoulder neck assist because they decided to tilt the car, which is definitely an engineering control. So I just sort of show that picture to you to interest you in answering that question. Next slide, please. So when we look at regulating industrial wearables, the big regulator, actually, surprisingly, is the US Food and Drug Administration, because they regulate medical devices. And a exoskeleton on a disabled worker who happens to be a patient also is a Class 2 medical device. We don't see much happening in OSHA, and unlikely that the emerging technology that we're talking about is going to outpace OSHA's ability. The EU has written about this, but have not decided to do any regulations. The big issue here are consensus standards, and ASTM F48 is the big committee on exoskeletons and exosuits. Encourage employers who are interested to follow that issue. Next slide, please. So just want to let you know, the big issue that we've learned from our studies is you have to define the safety need. You have to sell that to the workers. They have to know, why am I wearing this thing? And that clearly are step 1, 2, and 3 of wearables in the workplace in terms of bringing them into the workplace. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for this short introduction into exoskeletons, and happy to answer any questions you may have. Back to you, Sarah.
Dr. Howard, thank you for giving us a glimpse into the future of work and MSD solutions as we enter into our second year of the MSD Pledge. My name is Sarah Isher. I'm a senior program manager at the National Safety Council, and I lead the MSD Solutions Lab. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Let's dive into this Q&A. I see that we have some people already engaging in that, which is great. Dr. Howard, I'm excited to go deeper into this conversation with you. So as you covered in your presentation, the future of work is rich with emerging technologies that have opportunities to improve the way we work. But what do you believe are the most pressing concerns with emerging technologies today? And what steps can employers take to mitigate these challenges?
Well, that's a super great question. And it's really a strategic question, because as I showed in all those little bubbles, you can go into any of those bubbles. Well, it would be sensors, robotics, AI as an example, and dig a little deeper and do your own risk-benefit calculation. You know, as an example, although we didn't talk about it today, but AI and all of the methods that are used, and the most exciting one that we've heard about most recently is generative AI, producing OpenAI Chat GPT-4. But aside from that, just using an algorithmic solution to a process, for instance, I think it's a real challenge for safety and health folks, because as you know, there's a term called algorithmic hygiene, where it's really the responsibility of the safety and health practitioner to know, what is that algorithm doing? And what are some of the risks associated with that algorithm? That's an example. Similarly, if you look at sensors, diving deep as a safety and health practitioner, using those kinds of sensors, what's going to happen to all that data that the sensor is going to pick up? How am I going to analyze it? How am I going to be able to tell, well, where is the hazard here? It may not be as clear when you see data coming at you from 24/7. And then how can I fashion hazard management controls based on that data? You look at the robotics that we just talked about and exoskeletons. Well, gee, it looks promising. Maybe I'd like to try it. Well, I got to look at the literature, which is thin, as I mentioned, the long-term use for the VT Ford study. It's not much. It's promising. How do I do that? Should I do a pilot in my workplace? How do I find out more about that? So I think wherever you look, in any of these new technologies that are coming online in the future of work, it's going to be a challenge for safety and health professionals, no doubt. And we're going to have to learn new things. For instance, we're going to have to figure out, okay, I have this opaque algorithm that my employer wants to buy for our process. I got to figure out whether it's safe or not.
Yeah.
That's a real challenge, I think.
I completely agree. You talked a lot about algorithms in that response. So there's been a lot of discussions about bias in algorithms and AI training. So how can employers safeguard against, inadvertent discrimination when deploying these new technologies?
Well, this is another super, super great question. And there is a lot of interest, both in terms of users, also in terms of the Congress has had hearings lately. One of the biggest issues is discrimination using one of these types of tools, an algorithmic solution, no matter how you're using it. The problem is that a lot of these algorithms are trained on data from the internet. And as we all know, the internet can have its sort of structural biases relative to gender, to race, ethnicity, et cetera. And in fact, the interest is growing in this area in terms of the risk mitigation. And I will mention the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, recently issued a information guidance, which I hope all of employers will look at, giving employers some warning, some caution about using these types of tools, like an algorithmic tool, to make sure that they're not promoting discrimination in their workplace that's in violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So the risks are clearly there, and discrimination is the first one. I think the other big risk that we talk about that I think will impact safety and health is one we just talked about, and that is the opacity of algorithms. Sometimes even their designers don't know exactly how they're working in practice. And so when you bring something into the workplace like an algorithmic tool, it really is incumbent on the safety and health professional to continue to monitor how that algorithm is working, even after you buy it, even after you read the manufacturer's booklet and all that. It's going to be a constant surveillance to see that that tool is not discriminating. If you're using it for, let's say, algorithmic management, algorithmic recruitment, algorithmic hiring, or those other HR aspects. Also, if you're using it for a safety process, you want to make sure that it's not doing something that you didn't anticipate it doing, because the more sophisticated algorithms are basically machine intelligence, and they learn. They do not have to be programmed to do something. They learn as they go. That's both frightening as well as exciting, because on the positive side, so I don't depress everybody, it may actually work out for us that they will find a near miss that we missed. And they may stop a process when it should be stopped that we didn't see the trigger for it. So we have to be positive, we have to be negative, we have to balance all of it out.
Yeah, and what I'm really hearing is, as EHS professionals, we can't just purchase and implement something bright and shiny and walk away, right? We have to do our due diligence and make sure that it's both helping solve the issue and not introducing another hazard into the workplace.
Exactly. I think that due diligence issue, we need to put it in all caps and neon. And because that's going to be the challenge for safety and health practitioners. How do I do due diligence when I don't understand what's happening with this algorithm, for instance. So I think that's extremely important. And one of the issues I'll mention, since I did mention OpenAI's GPT-4, which some of you may have played around with if you've downloaded it on Bing from Microsoft. I used a question the other day called a prompt, and I asked it to show me salmon swimming upstream. And what I got were salmon fillets from the grocery store in what looked like a river, I guess. And of course, the prompt that I should have used was salmon fish swimming upstream in order to get the right answer. I'll mention that because, my due diligence for doing prompts is very rudimentary. And I predict today with all of us that we're going to have a new job classification called prompt engineer, which we're going to rely on to actually do our prompts with GPT-4 and its successors to be able to use it properly.
Maybe that's something that I can urge my daughter to get into, whenever she enters the workforce. So we have just a couple minutes left with you. Just one last question. In the absence of robust federal regulation on new technologies like artificial intelligence, as we've talked about, and also cobots, what considerations would you offer to employers to act as responsible stewards of these technologies in the workplace?
These questions are fabulous. And this question is even better than the ones before, because it goes to the issue of, if you're lazy, you go and look up a reg, right? And OSHA regs, are hundreds of pages, and it tells you all the things you have to do. And all you have to do is make a program right. And there are great vendors out there that will take an OSHA reg and make a program out of it, and you download it and buy it, and job done. Well, if you don't have that, and you don't have a national standard setting organization like OSHA doing anything in this area, maybe a little guidance document, certainly, but you have to do a lot more work as responsible employers' due diligence. And that's why I mentioned the ASTM F48 Committee on Exoskeletons. Get involved with that committee, listen to meetings at least, see where people are at. It's a bunch of experts that are diving deep into this issue, lots of workplace issues here. And I think that's the best. Read as much as you can, draw your consultants in, find out what's going on, call up the people that are doing studies, do deep dives. And to me, it's the only way that's going to work. It's a lot of work, no doubt. It's a lot of work. There's no easy pathway.
Well, thank you so much again for your time and your thoughtful responses, Dr. Howard. I know that we have several questions in the Q&A function. We're not going to be able to get to those today, but I promise that we'll try to send some responses. Once again, Dr. Howard, it's a pleasure, and it's been an honor to be able to talk to you today.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. And thank you for inviting me. And thank you for all of the work that you do with NSC to prevent MSDs. Much success to everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. So in our next conversation, we are honored to speak with business leaders who have championed innovative solutions and a culture of safety as part of their commitment to the MSD Pledge. Just as a reminder, as I've said, we welcome you all to submit questions via the Q&A function. We'll do our best to get to them. Otherwise, we will follow up post-event. Now I'm pleased to welcome our next speakers. All three of the panelists are experts in the safety and ergonomics in industries ranging from chemical manufacturing to utility provisions to beverage distribution. Clint Fritz is the safety programs and risk manager at Nelson Brothers. Clint has over 15 years of safety and health experience, holding several positions in chemical manufacturing and mining. We're also joined by Christine Cohn, Senior Manager, Ergonomics and Industrial Athletes at Pacific Gas and Electric Company. Christine brings over 18 years of experience developing and managing corporate ergonomics programs for small businesses and national and international Fortune 500 companies. And finally, we are joined by Scott Solaski, Corporate OSHA and Workers' Comp Manager at L&F Distributors Favorite Brands. Scott brings 2 decades of experience in the hazardous waste industry to beverage distribution, specializing in safety. So Clint, Christine, and Scott, thank you for joining us. So let's just go ahead and get started. Starting off with a round robin discussion or question to each of you, what inspired your companies to sign the pledge? And Christine, I'm going to start with you.
Great, thank you. I think for us, a key driver was the opportunity to participate in the annual MSD Index, to benchmark with other pledge community members, as well as to benchmark our program efforts year over year to track our progress. The opportunity to receive valuable insight from the National Safety Council's MSD Solution Lab on areas of opportunity that we can use to enhance our program has been invaluable for us. And I think it lends credibility to our program, the things that we're doing, and demonstrates our company's commitment to safety.
So great to hear. Clint, I'll ask you the same thing. What inspired your company to sign the MSD Pledge?
Yeah, with just over 400 employees nationwide, we are limited on our resources, and musculoskeletal disorders have been our most common type of injury, and it, leading to worker disability and reassignments of duties. These injuries are typically shoulder or back or knee strains and sprains, which are often caused by some of our functions like repetitive forceful exertions like shoveling. So with this pledge, we accept the accountability and we welcome the resources available through this program.
Great to hear. And Scott?
So we are a very labor intensive distributor here, where we're moving thousands of cases of beer from our warehouse to our delivery, and we're definitely noticing our injuries on our new workers kept continuously rising with back injuries, shoulder and knee injuries. And what we've also noticed too is that our aging workers that have worked for us for a long time have now had many injuries as well, with knee injuries especially.
And Scott, I just want to say, please, on behalf of myself, thank your employees for their service.
I would definitely do that. Thank you.
So part of participating in the MSD Pledge is contributing to the MSD Solutions Index. It's an assessment tool that allows organizations to better understand both their successes and opportunities for improvement. So can you each share a key learning that your organization gained through participating in the index? And Scott, I'll start with you this time.
So thank you. So our overall score was advancing. So that was good to hear. All the efforts I've put forth have been making a difference. But one of our biggest weaknesses was being very reactive. And I knew that already, but now it's just pointed it out that we need to take more control and further our safety advancement, further the MSD education, further ergonomics, and continuously build that safety culture with our employees.
Yeah, it's great to really have that validation, right? Whenever you receive that report. Clint, what was one of your findings?
Oh, well, like Scott, we also received an advancing in the index. And I love this metrics because it actually indicates we are building solutions to manage the MSD's risk with plenty of room to grow. And so this is exactly where Nelson Brothers is today. Prior to our pledge, we experienced 5 MSD injuries per year. And just to provide some understanding of how big of a problem this is for us, we typically only have 7 injuries total each year. So 5 of those were MSD injuries. And the MSD injuries are typically the sprained knees and bulging spinal discs, sprained wrist, those kind of things. And that was all confirmed in the index.
Great. And Christine?
Our company really appreciated the index report and found that it confirmed where we thought we stood with our ergonomics program. We were rated as a proactive program, but a key area for focus for us is to move beyond only looking at the physical risk factors that can contribute to MSDs, and to consider how we can tap into the wellness resources that we have available to take a total worker health approach and advance our program.
Great to hear. So one of NSC's goals through the MSD Pledge is to inspire culture change, where everyone at every level of the organization is really accountable for the health and safety. So Clint, can you start by sharing what lessons you've learned at Nelson Brothers about engaging your workforce in MSD solutions?
Absolutely. Yeah, we hadn't experienced an injury near miss just prior to signing the pledge. And an employee was filling bags with 35 pounds of product. And at the end of the shift, he complained of his shoulder hurting. We took him to the workers' comp physician, where we learned he had a strained shoulder. And I mean, this guy's a big guy and he never complains to anybody. So we knew we had a problem. So we had a meeting with everybody in the process and told them we need their help. One of the senior operators said that they were lifting these heavy bags multiple times an hour, and some operators were just pushing themselves to get it done faster. So this got me thinking about the NIOS lifting equation that I learned while studying for the CSP certification. And with the help of our operators, we were able to determine that the design process exceeded the lifting capacity of that task. So once the process was redesigned, a light bulb came on in the employee's mind that they could make a difference in their own safety and health. And we've seen great outcomes. Matter of fact, I want to shout out to our St. Paul manufacturing team for going 4 years without a recordable injury. So
Great to hear. Thank you. Yeah. And Christine, can you explain setting up a formalized process for participatory ergonomics, what this is and what value you expect it to gain through this process?
PG&E has a rich history of engaging our frontline workers in identifying risks and solutions to prevent MSD injuries. We've had ergonomics committees, and in the past, we held an internal Ergo Cup competition where teams would come together with solutions to common risks that they saw in the workplace. I think seeing the worker involvement when they feel heard, when they see that their initiatives are being taken seriously, when they see action being taken, this helps to get their buy-in so that as the ergonomics program, our role becomes advocating for the coworker instead of trying to convince them to participate. And I think in terms of formalizing, as long as there is a solution that is simple and consistent, whether that's having an ergo committee, a network of ergo champions, working with a grassroots safety committee, but it needs to be a very clear path for coworkers how to raise their issues, how to share their ideas, and how to track progress toward resolution.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from both you, Christine, and Clint is that really we have to be centered around collaboration. And there has to be a straightforward approach to what we're doing. So Scott, you've been tackling ways to foster manager buy-in in MSD solutions. Why is manager buy-in essential?
So being a family-owned business, managers are always promoted from within. And so as you promote from within, those still core values of sales have still progressed along the way. And how the manager used to do it maybe 20, 30 years ago is still how it's believed yet today. So when a manager goes out to maybe help an employee in the route, help the employee at one of the accounts, and the employee sees the manager doing incorrect ergonomic lifting, dialing too much beer, jumping, doing those unsafe acts, well, what does the employee see? Well, they go, well, if the manager does it, I can do it as well. So what we need to do is really change the value of the manager, as we've been really working hard in. And when the manager is now out there, one, do it properly so the employee sees you. And secondly, if the employee is doing something wrong, let's go ahead, correct the employee on the spot, teach them the correct way to help us reduce all of our injuries.
Yeah, so how have you been incentivizing managers to engage in this effort? And what are some of the successful examples you've seen as a result?
One of our managers at one of the locations, after we pointed out how many ergonomic injuries we've had overall and just injuries at that particular location, was astonished that he was #1 on the list for the injuries. So what he did is actually suggested that he was going to start text messaging his team, which consisted of drivers, assistant drivers, merchandisers, salesmen, and put out a safety message every Monday and make sure that they respond back. And he was very successful in reducing his injuries, bringing up safety at least once a week to his employees. So what we've done is made that as a best practice to get other managers at other locations to really do the same thing. And what we've seen is that we reduced the injuries in his particular location. He spent less time dealing with injury reports, dealing with employees on restricted duty, days away from work. And then overall, our turnover rate, that helps that as well, and the absenteeism rate as well, because employees do see that we're taking the time to care about them for injuries.
Yeah, and really it's just those small things, right, that can make a big impact.
Very big, yes.
So over the past year, we've worked to provide a range of solutions through the lab, from leveraging the latest advances in technology to uncovering low-cost affordable solutions. So regardless of your company budget, we believe that MSD solutions should be accessible to all. So Christine, can you share some of the ways PG&E is considered using new and emerging technologies to identify and solve MSD risks?
About 2 years ago, our PG&E team put together a machine learning predictive model to help us identify office workers who are at greatest risk of developing an MSD injury. As Dr. Howard alluded today, it is something that we monitor and consider how we can improve the model and what workers the model is identifying. Those workers go through an intervention, and in our early preliminary analysis over the last 2 years, those who have participated in the model, the vast majority have not experienced an ergonomics-related injury since their participation. We're thinking about how can we take that similar type of mindset to our industrial workforce. We're working on a pilot for wearable technology, taking into high consideration transparency on data privacy, how that data is going to be used to help our workers feel comfortable and engaging in that type of technology with us. Wanting to use that technology to provide training to our workers, especially those who do a lot of manual material handling. And we'll be combining that with one-on-one coaching sessions from our injury prevention specialists to ensure there's still a human element attached to that. We're thinking as well about how we can use wearable technology to conduct ergonomic risk assessments. We are based in California. Our service territory is about 2/3 of the state, and we have a small team. And so being able to get wearables out there to see what's going on and help us analyze data and consider solutions is another area that we're looking at using technology.
That's great to hear. So Scott, at L&F Distributors and Favorite Brands, you've implemented some very practical, low-cost solutions that have made a big difference for your workforce. Can you describe for us some of the changes that you've led across these business units and what kind of return on investment the company can expect?
So what we have done is looked at the delivery side itself first, and we've reduced the number of cases each employee takes on the dolly. And so this has helped less strains on backs, less shoulder injuries for that. We've also implemented, instead of trying to go up a curb, to use the handicap ramp instead, because employees would always be trying to get the dollies up with loaded either kegs, cases, and be injuring themselves. And if not, we have also given them curb ramps as well to help them in the event there is no handicap ramps. We also dropped kegs, which weigh 165 pounds, off a truck, really only about 2 feet up, but the drop onto concrete, asphalt really takes a toll and the vibration back up into your body. So what we've actually done is found floor exercise mats that will take the vibration away, stop the keg from having a solid stop, and now a soft stop, and we've really reduced our injuries on the shoulders. For overhead reaching, when we've gone in and have to fill coolers at your convenience stores, grocery stores, it was always overhead reaching. So what we've asked them to do is look for ladders at each of these convenience stores, which are usually available, and go on the ladder so at least you're at the level height. And then for our warehouse employees, what we've done is we've actually have a picking machine. Instead of picking layer by layer or row by row, this picking machine will actually grab 2 to 3 layers at a time, possibly saving the employee anywhere from 16 cases up to maybe 28 cases of picking on our most valuable, or on our most popular products at each of the locations. So then we've also gone ahead, a lot of refresher training as well, we've consistently done.
That's great to hear. So really, it's not necessarily about what your budget is, but even just a mindset shift, thinking to ask for a ladder instead of, your body needing to take on that risk. I love to hear that.
Right.
And Clint, Nelson Brothers employs miners who are exposed to extreme working conditions. What types of MSD solutions have you adopted to make these conditions safer for your field employees?
Yeah, this may sound a bit fundamental, but we actually are just talking with the employees to understand their concerns and how to reduce these MSD injuries. We've had quite a few near misses. In those near misses, through investigation, we have learned a lot in how to reduce those MSD near misses and injuries. But care is one of our core values. And through the National Safety Council recommendation of worker engagement and the commitment of leadership, we have seen a substantial reduction in MSD injuries. And our leaders have provided the tools necessary to work safe. A recent example of this was when we replaced shovels with skid steers. So not only are the teams working in a safer environment, but they're also happier to get the job done quicker.
Yeah, I think what you said is just key, because at the center of everything that we do as EHS professionals is caring about the people. If it weren't for the people, the employees, we wouldn't have jobs, right? So we always need to remember our actions really make a difference, and even just taking a small step to have those conversations truly makes a difference to our workforce.
Yes.
So what is one big accomplishment that your company has achieved since becoming an MSD Pledge member and learning from your MSD Solutions Index results? And Christine, I'm going to start with you.
We took the results of our index survey and did some further analysis, conducting a benchmark survey with 62 other companies in the utilities, construction, and energy space to understand within our own industry what are the trends for MSD prevention and where can we learn and grow together to prevent MSDs. So I think that the data that we received from that benchmark, as well as the data from the index, has helped us to develop a long-term strategy for our next phase to move our program toward that total worker health approach and continue on our journey to prevent MSDs.
It's great to hear. Clint, what's one big accomplishment that you've had at Nelson Brothers?
Well, I think the results speak for themselves. The averaging 5 MSD injuries for the past 5 years to only having 2 last year. And one of those was even prior to the pledge. So we're very excited about, again, just the employee engagement and the programs that we're putting in place with that. So our new philosophy recognizes that error is part of human resource, and we just need to protect our employees from those conditions.
Yeah, I love that. And Scott, what's something that you've learned or considered a big accomplishment?
So what we've been working on is our worker engagement here, getting the employees really involved, getting the employees very familiar with what are ergonomic injuries, how can they also help themselves out there to identify these particular hazards and give us key information back. The index has also given me some leeway to go ahead and speak directly to the owners and tell them, hey, here's where we're lacking. What low-cost solutions can we come up with to really build our safety culture? What can we implement over here with managers and employees to help us? One of the lines in our mission statement is an ideal place of employment, and that's what we want to create, is that ideal place of employment for our employees while we're being a community leader as well.
That's great to hear. Lastly, before we get into audience Q&A, we know safety is all about continuous improvement. So what is your company hoping to gain from its MSD Pledge commitments and being a part of the Pledge community in 2023 and beyond? Clint, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about learning how to reduce MSD injuries to 0. If we can achieve this, we know that we can send our employees home whole, and work shouldn't have to hurt. So our goal is just to get the job done safely and go home to our loved ones.
I love that. Work shouldn't have to hurt. We should have t-shirts made that say that, right?
There you go.
Yeah. Christine, what are you hoping for the future?
I think the opportunity to just like this, to learn from others. What are they doing and what's been effective? Coming together and being able to learn from each other, how we can reduce our MSD injuries is a huge benefit in being part of the Pledge community. I'm excited to see where our program goes as we consider total worker health approaches. We have seen a downward trend over the last few years, fortunately, with our ergonomic related injuries. And we just want to continue to drive that down to help our workers feel safe and to show our company's commitment that everyone and everything is always safe.
Great. And Scott, looking towards the future, what are you hoping to gain?
So far, I've gone ahead and used the network and resources that the MSD Solutions Lab has given us. and learned a lot about what makes up our musculoskeletal disorders, our ergonomic injuries, and continue to learn from the people here as well, to be able to reach out and have them reach out to me. I've gone through not only our ergonomics training, but also a lot of our other safety programs as well, and realized some of the adjustments I could make, and also has helped to really strengthen our new employee training.
That's great. I really enjoyed this discussion, and if you're okay with it, I think we're going to hop into some audience Q&A. So a question for Christine. What ergonomic solutions are you looking to implement for utility workers, specifically on bucket trucks? Is there any interest in exoskeletons or something else?
That's a great question. I've been with Pacific Gas and Electric now for just a little over the year. And, you know, as an ergonomist, looking at our utility workers and some of the tasks that they do, honestly, it's a head scratcher. How are we going to address this? How can we reduce the risk? Where there's so many other things that we have to keep in mind for intrinsic safety that it can make it challenging to implement ergonomic solutions. I think one of the things that the team did years before I joined the company was we actually moved to implement battery-powered tools wherever it was safe to do so, to help reduce forces that were being used with hand tools. And we've definitely seen a decline since that time. I think other things with the bucket trucks, we are looking at one of the wearables to help us assess risk and help us also be able to show our workers why we make the recommendations we make to get close, as close as safely possible, to be able to keep their bodies in top working condition. So it is a challenge. You know, we've looked at exoskeletons. I don't think the market from what we've seen is quite there yet. But it is something that we're keeping on the radar and open to learning more about and seeing if it's a good solution for our workforce.
Great. And I think that's a great question. You know, personally, my father is an electrical lineman. So I've often wondered, you know, what could we do to help make his job safer? So I think it's great that, you know, employees that are working with you and for you have someone in their corner who's got their back that can try to look at some solutions for these, you know, risky, more complex jobs. So I have a question for Scott. Can you provide some additional information about the picking machine used in the beer distribution warehouse?
Yes, I can. What this particular machine is, it's called a tie guard machine. It's actually an attachment that goes on the forklift, and it's like a huge clamp on 4 sides that the forklift driver goes back and forth on a rail machine, and you line the beer up along a rail, and he just goes ahead based on the picking order, and it says, let's say 21 cases of Bud Light, 21 cases of Michelob Ultra. They come down with the big clamp, pick up 3 rows of the beer, clamp it hard enough so that it stays, but yet not hard enough that it breaks the beer, puts it on a pallet. Then if the next order is maybe 10 more cases of another product, they go up and down the rail again till they find it, get the particular beer again, clamp it, and layer it on the top. And then as employees are also feeding the lines too, to keep the pallets full, so they can keep the tie guard machine continuously moving.
Great. So I'm going to kind of combine 2 of these questions. So Ernest is asking about, you know, if you've had success utilizing a stretch and flex program. So first, I would like each of you to, you know, talk about that. Do you implement stretching? Do you require stretching? And then also, how many employees do each of your companies have? And then how many are experienced versus new hires? And Clint, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so just to go to the second question first is we have 400 employees, and just recently, and we're all experiencing across the nation, worker shortage. So we're actually finding ourselves hiring younger workforce. We used to have more of an older workforce in the mining industry, but now it just seems to be, I mean, we're 18-year-olds are very common now, we're seeing. So that is quite a unique change for us. But, you know, our pre-shift work that we do have safety meetings and talk about the hazards in front of us. And during that, sometimes we'll mention about making sure that we stretch and flex. One of the things I talked about during this presentation was that we're talking more, engaging more with our employees. And one of the feedbacks that we have received from them is the fatigue. And so that's where we're learning once they reach a certain point in the day, they start to fatigue. And that's usually where that MSD injury occurs. So just by understanding that, we're doing more time out. And at that time, we're also doing a little more stretching during those breaks.
Great. And Scott, what about you? How many employees? What are the demographics? And do you use stretching?
So we actually have 13 locations throughout Texas and New Mexico. We have 1,500 employees total that we have here. And we do require stretching at the beginning of every shift. It's 7 required different exercises from the head down to the feet that we ask them to do. And if you're on the afternoon shift, again, they stretch afternoons. Some of them do have long drives to maybe their first stop. Could be an hour, could be a 2-hour drive. And we have asked again that they re-stretch. On cold days that we do have a few down here, again, it's a stretch maybe between stops, between rides to go ahead and get the body ready again.
Great. And Christine, what about you?
PG&E has about 23,000 employees, and in terms of the demographics, many employees at PG&E have been with us for a long time. I don't know the exact mix of new employees to longer tenured employees, but I do know our tenure tends to be quite high. We've had stretching flex programs for quite some time. We have our industrial athlete program that helps to guide some of those stretch and flex and ensure that the stretches that are being performed by the workers are aligned with the kind of work that they need to do. I think for us, one of the challenges with stretch and flex, because it's difficult at times to find engineering solutions, there might be sometimes too much focus on stretch and flex, and helping workers understand that it's not the silver bullet, but it is important and it is helpful. We're also really trying to get our office workers moving more. I think our messaging at times, and we all hear this regardless of where we work, is take a break. But what does that really mean? Trying to help office workers understand that they're static and getting up and moving and stretching is really important. So our office ergonomics team leads twice daily virtual stretch and flex sessions. They're recorded if you can't attend live, but we're trying to get our office workers also up and moving more frequently.
That's great to hear. When we think about taking a break, it all depends on what type of work you do, right? I sit here all day and I need to be up moving around versus people on the front line. When we say take a break, we truly mean like sit down, take a breath. So it's great that you can kind of come back, understand each of your employees' risks and work towards a common goal of helping them be healthier. So with that, thank you to our panelists for such a robust discussion. I feel like I could talk to you all day. I just truly want to thank you for joining us today and being open and vulnerable to share your company's story. So now we want to hear from you about MSD solutions at your company. So we're going to put up a couple of questions with some polls. So our first poll question reads, hopefully you're seeing it pop up. What new or emerging technology for MSD solutions are you considering or piloting in your workplace? Are you thinking about exoskeletons, collaborative robots, or wearable sensors? So what new or emerging technology? I'm not able to see how if people are answering or not, but the next question is, which stage best described your company's MSD solutions plan? So do you not have an MSD solutions plan in place? Are you learning about how you can get one started? Are you preparing to implement? Do you have some systems in place? Or do you have a robust MSD solutions plan? Or do you have a robust MSD solutions plan and you're looking forward to sharing or your learnings with others? So answer those looking at technologies and also, what state of maturity is your MSD solutions plan at your organization? Thank you so much for participating in this. And it looks like we have over half of you all looking at wearable sensors, and then kind of a split mix between exos and collaborative robots. And then also quite a variety of answers. So we have about 34% with some systems in place to prevent. And thank you for those that are learning about how you can get started, and also for sharing what you all are doing. So with that, as you heard, every organization is at a different point on their safety journey, and our mission at NSC is to help all workplaces advance theirs, no matter if they are a multinational corporation or a small family-owned business. Our annual Workplace Safety Summit is designed to convene thought leaders from around the globe to drive meaningful action against the most pressing safety challenges of our time. I joined the MSD Solutions Lab leadership team earlier this year, but have been part of the Council's workplace practice since 2021, and previously worked as an industrial hygiene ergonomics manager at sites very similar to those as our panelists. So it's an honor to share with you today the ways in which NSC continues to drive forward its mission to create safer, healthier workplaces for all through widespread MSD prevention. While many organizations promote the value of safety, we know it takes courage for a company to not only submit itself to an independent review, but to apply the lessons learned through an external audit. And this is precisely what we asked our safety community to do when we unveiled the MSD Pledge last June. And I'm pleased to share you all rose to the challenge. In recognition of this, NSC is proud to debut a new component of the MSD Pledge, the MSD Solutions Index Badge. This badge is a token of distinction presented to organizations that successfully complete the annual MSD Solutions Index. Earning this signals your organization's integrity to uphold your company's values. It also distinguishes your organization as a best-in-class employer, one that's truly committed to prioritizing the well-being of workers and reducing MSDs. I know that decreasing MSDs is not an easy task. It's one that involves more than simply training employees how to work safely, or procuring new technology to meet this challenge, or as Christine said, stretching. Your commitment to transparency and accountability truly helps us move the needle in solving injuries as complex as MSDs. NSC will be distributing digital badges to organizations that have earned this distinction in the coming weeks, and we encourage you to proudly broadcast your leadership in this area across your company channels and throughout your industry community. For organizations that may have joined the MSD Pledge later in the year, there will still be an opportunity to complete the index and earn the MSD Solutions Index Badge, so keep an eye out for updates. The bottom line is this: you all are part of a global community leading the way in the future of workplace safety. So as we continue to evolve the MSD Pledge and look beyond our initial goal of reducing MSDs by 25% by 2025, NSC is pleased to unveil the next iteration of this first of its kind global call to action to transform workplace safety, the MSD Pledge 2.0. Launching later this year, MSD Pledge 2.0 will be a new opportunity for organizations committed to improving workplace safety to join our growing community. As I mentioned before, safety is all about continuous improvement, and every organization is at a different point on their journey, and we really understand that. By increasing access to the lab's incredible network and resources through this Pledge initiative, we have the ability to create safer workplaces, healthier communities, and more equitable organizations, so people can really live their fullest lives both on and off the clock. Stay tuned for more updates on this new program. In the meantime, both the MSD Pledge and MSD Solutions Index represent a critical step in this collective quest to mitigate MSDs, but they are certainly not the last. In addition to launching these hallmark initiatives, the MSD Solutions Lab has continued to advance several programs to uncover and broadcast the most effective, impactful, and practical MSD solutions, one of which is a new white paper, Emerging Technologies for the Prevention of Musculoskeletal Disorders. As we learned by analyzing initial MSD Solutions Index findings, just 1/3 of organizations are currently using technology to prevent MSDs. Despite researching new safety technology, only 15% of organizations have been able to test or pilot new preventive measures. These statistics indicate potentially significant gaps in both knowledge and access to safety innovations that can prevent MSDs. So released later this summer in partnership with Safety Tech Accelerator, this new report aims to resolve uncertainties surrounding emerging MSD technologies and help organizations of all sizes better navigate the expansive technology marketplace. It addresses key concerns today's employers may have, such as trends in artificial intelligence and its impact on workplace safety, the difference between active and passive exoskeletons and which one may be best for your workplace, and also what type of return on investment may be gained from implementing specific MSD technologies. The report also discusses Industry 4.0 and beyond. Industry 4.0 is characterized by computerization, big data, AI in the workplace. And although it's still ongoing, it's very clear that Industry 5.0 has already begun, and understanding how to make advantages of its capabilities is critical for today's leaders as we prepare for a safer, more automated future. Safety is a collaborative endeavor, and that's why I love this field. The MSD Solutions Lab has made tremendous progress in the past year, due in large part to the participation of our robust and industry-leading safety network. Some of the things we've done are uncover new technology solutions to MSDs caused by manual material handling through the launch of the Safety Innovation Challenge. And we really look forward to hosting our second challenge at our upcoming NSC Safety Congress and Expo in October, focusing on preventing MSDs affecting the upper body. We are continuing to advance pioneering research. In addition to the emerging technology white paper mentioned earlier, NSC plans to publish new findings evaluating the correlation between DE&I and MSDs later this year, which will shed light on non-physical risk factors employers can mitigate to advance their safety initiatives. And something that I'm really excited about, we're committing nearly $300,000 in funding to the newly introduced Research to Solutions and MSD Solutions Pilot Grant 1.0 programs to help the nation's top innovators advance cutting-edge MSD research and technology. We look forward to announcing the inaugural grant recipients in the next few days and broadcasting their work across our safety community throughout the year. This time last year, we closed our summit with an important call to action, asking our community of business leaders and safety experts to join us in preventing the most common workplace injury. Today, we are so proud of the hundreds of organizations heeding this call to make MSD prevention a core focus of their safety culture through the MSD Pledge. And we know this time next year, with your continued support, partnership, and commitment to safety improvement and innovation, we are setting up for success to be in an even better position so people around the world can live fuller, injury-free lives. So thank you again for joining today's summit. For those of you joining the event that are not part of the Pledge community, I'd like to ask you to take the first step in reducing MSDs in your organization by signing the pledge at nsc.org/MSDs. I hope you have a great day, and as always, be safe.